everybody, and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be checking out Superman issue 32 by Joshua Williamson, Eddie Barrows, Iber Ferreira, and Alejandro Sanchez. The secrets of Lex Luthor are finally revealed in this DCKO crossover, but before we get to those shocking revelations, we check in with Lois Lane, who while at the Fortress of Solitude thinks about her time as Superwoman and how she adored teaming up with her husband, but then the powers were taken from her cells drained of the mysterious power, and since the Atom Project and Superman didn't know where they came from, they have no idea if they got sent back to the original owner or are gone completely. Now we know the original owner is actually General Zod, and that's a storyline that's still yet to come into fruition. We know General Zod is on his way to Earth, and I don't know when that story is going to take place. I imagine sometime late next year, since this event goes all the way into March, April. Lois's powers coming back wasn't something I expected to happen so soon, at least, but it's a great idea as it allows Lois to have an active part in the DCKO story that isn't just her sitting around with the evacuees and, covering their story. She actually gets an action-orientated part of the plot. It makes up a little bit for her story getting railroaded by the beginning of this event, as her story, Mercy's story, and a bunch of the other stories like Marilyn Moonlight's just kind of abruptly ended so we could shift things over into the DCKO storyline. Lois meanwhile knew that in her gut the powers were completely gone from her and she had to reckon with that, but she hates when her gut is wrong. In the present, Lois, with her newly reinstated powers, battles Sunboy from the Absolute Legion, smashing him across the fortress. Superboy Prime cheers her on, warning Lois that the powers might not last as long as they need, since they are in the middle of an event, which means rules of time and continuity are a little bit tricky, so they must leave now. Lois refuses to leave since they need to look through the Kryptonian archive for information on Darkseid, Doomsday, and the tournament, and they need to somehow manage to get it to Clark. However, Prime isn't interested in that, just wanting to know about this tournament that Lois mentioned. Deep down in the heart of Apocalypse, Lex thinks about the opening challenges the tournament has thrown at them and how despite everything they have been through, Superman never once thought to come to him for help with Darkseid, and instead he tried to lock him and the other villains away, like they are just part of the Darkseid problem Superman has to deal with. Lex is angered that the League took away their choice, so instead of being on the same team now against Darkseid like he would like, Lex has had his people and Superman has his. I said in my review of DCKO issue 2, which I read a week before this particular issue actually came out, so I didn't know we'd have access to what is happening here, and I said in that issue I really wanted to see more of Lex's reasonings, and the backstory about Lex wanting to become a villain again or Breaking Bad again, and I like what we're getting here. I like the more context of Lex's reasonings for doing that, and Williamson isn't disappointing in that regard. It's a pretty solid reasoning. He's just not being evil for the sake of being evil. He's being evil because he feels somewhat hurt that Superman didn't think he could come to him for help, despite everything they've recently been through with Supercorp and Lex trying to, make amends now that when he lost his memory during the House of Brainiac storyline. But because of Superman's preemptive actions to deal with the villains before this event, that's kind of tarnished their relationship, and I like that they're playing on that instead of just saying, oh, Lex is bad again. Lex tells Superman that despite all of this, he is happy to see the heroes since he wants him to witness his victory in the tournament. Clark asks how he and the Legion escaped the Phantom Zone since the League had a plan and Lex put that plan in jeopardy. Lex thinks that Superman is smart enough so he should just try and figure it out himself. 1 week prior, as the Quantum Quorum tell the League about what is coming for them, Grodd telepathically contacts Lex, who is in the process of leaving Nandra Parbat after being attacked by the Absolute Legion. He's thankful that he and Grodd's mental connection has stayed stable after all these years and allowed them to connect to each other. He suspected that something like this would happen, but Grodd doesn't think the why of it matters, as Superman isn't going for the plan the League are putting together about the villains being put into the Phantom Zone. I'm a bit of a stickler for stories where we see big events from different perspectives and point of views, the same event told from a different character's point of view and how they view sort of things, and I like that this is what this entire issue is. It's Lex viewing the opening salvo of DCKO through his eyes and seeing what Superman and the heroes are doing as evil, filling in a lot of the gaps we saw saw in the last Superman issue and in the last 2 DC KO issues, fleshing out that story and giving much needed context. Lex knows they need to plan ahead, so later as Mr. Terrific's T-Spheres head out and capture all of the villains, the Legion are actually teleported to the old Legion of Doom HQ. Giganta asks how they are not in the Phantom Zone right now, since the League will realize their mistake and just come back for them, but a voice reveals that they used hard-like holograms to fool the T-Spheres and the League, and while it looks like the villains are inside the Phantom Zone, it is just holograms, and it will give them a little bit of a head start on their plan. King Shark asks the voice what they will do, and the being says that the League are after a weapon called the Heart of Apocalypse, and to do so, they need to enter a tournament and prove themselves ruthless enough, essentially show the Heart that they can become like what the Legion of Doom are, but the voice knows that they will fail since they will hesitate and show mercy. The voice is revealed to belong to Lex, who has since shaven his head and beard off. He tells the Legion that they have an opportunity to fix the world, and who better to fix the world than him. I like Lex's back to his only I can be the Superman the world needs bullshit we've seen countless times before. The added change here being that we're seeing it from a group of villains POV, villains who are kind of fed up with Lex always trying to make it about himself and take the lead and be the one in charge, and bigging up his importance in the grand scheme of an event. Cheetah thinks that Lex, while smart, doesn't have her fighting skill, grabbing the villain, but she is stopped by the arrival of the Joker, who likes the idea of another classic Lex-Joker team-up, wondering if they kill each other now or wait till the end of the tournament. Lex shuts down the group chatter, telling them that they will infiltrate the tournament and win, and not everything needs to be about chaos like the Joker wants it to be. So Lex's first mistake was trusting Joker, right? Like, that's gonna backfire spectacularly. It's gonna throw a wrench into the whole plan somehow, especially now that we know and what we've seen in DC KO issue 2 where he gets the Atom's belt, and I assume they keep those items throughout the entire event, maybe? I'm not entirely sure about that yet. We haven't yet to see that actually happen in the next couple of issues, but I can't imagine a Joker with the Atom belt being a good thing for the Legion, especially because also in that issue he eats Cheetah and stomps on Giganta, so Joker's just adding more chaos to this already chaotic plan. Starro asks how they're even going to get into the tournament, learning from Lex of the Nexus to Skataris that the Justice League will be using to get into the Heart, and they will follow after the heroes by being smarter. Later on, the Legion are now suited in a series of Lex's war suits, and they hurtle towards the Nexus after the Justice League have just gone through. The war suits begin burning up in the energy as they enter the blinding light to the Heart. Later, during the scavenger hunt for the powerful items, and as the heroes fight off each other and the villains for the powerful objects, Lex tells Superman that it's not about how strategic he can be, or because he knows he can go deep past his soul into a place that Superman never can go. It's all about sacrifice, and he has no problem with the Legion falling in battle, actually hoping they actually all die off. But the thing that is going to get under Superman's skin is that some of his friends are going to start seeing it that way as well. I kind of like this. Lex is fucking with Superman's mind, trying to throw him off balance, and like I theorized in my KO issue 2 review, I think it's all part of Lex's secret plan, like he's trying to push Superman to do what he can't in order to win the event and save the world. Like, he knows that Superman is the only one who can do this against Darkseid and wants him to actually do it, and he's pushing Clark to do it. Superman tells Lex that he won't be winning this tournament, not caring what happens next, but Lex doesn't think that Clark can see the biggest weakness he has, which he doesn't just care about the people, but he's also distracted by what's going on outside on Earth as well. This is what I mean when Lex is pushing Clark to do what he needs to win. He's trying to convince him that nothing outside the game matters, and we also saw that with Batman over the last 2 issues, where Batman has also been trying to reinforce into Clark that this is a game, you need to just play this game as it's intended, follow the rules, and we'll win and we'll save the Earth. And Superman just can't really wrap his head around having to do that because he's not wired that way. This is why I like the hero, because he's not wired the way, I'll just, commit an act of violence or something to win something. He doesn't do that. We've also started seeing him kind of go down that path as well. Just in the last issue, he got the Omega sanction after figuring out that he needs to be more like Darkseid Darkseid and make the sacrifices Darkseid had to make, and he did that in order to win a spot in the next round. As the tournament continues and Superman is pitted against Captain Atom and Lex against Etrigan the Demon in battles to the death, Lois finishes catching Prime up on what's going on. The former villain is upset he's not involved in the event, since he would probably kill everybody. Lois thought he'd been done with that sort of thing, and Prime says he is. He's just saying that he could do that because he's the power scaler's wet dream. Lois wants him to focus, since they have to find a way to get the lost Kryptonian archive to Clark, since he needs to know the truth about Doomsday's creation and how he was bred to fight Darkseid. Prime, only now realizing that they are in the fortress, has an idea, speeding off to get something. Lois tries to talk to Lara again, but Sunboy gets back up and now has backup from Pharaoh Lad and Timberwolf. Interestingly, Sunboy asks Lois if she wants to join them and Darkseid, which feels like a little cliche, you know, the join the Darkseid trope. But just thinking about it, this is actually the first time the whole join the Darkseid trope has been used in this story. I saw there were parts in earlier issues of the Superman tie-ins, as well as in the KO book, where there could have been that trope, you know, that offer, and it didn't happen. And I like that this is the first part for that. I applaud the restraint in using that to drum up drama. Lois immediately declines the offer, leaping into the air as she calls for Prime, who is almost done with his plan. Sunboy sees the archives, knowing they are a threat to their final god, and he wants to burn them. Lois refuses to let that happen, knowing that if her power fails her, she's still not letting him destroy the archives. Luckily, Lois has some backup from Superboy, Prime, and Superman himself, surprising Lois. Superman blasts through Pharaoh Lad as Prime attacks Timberwolf, burning the villain with his heat vision. Lois defends Prime from Sunboy, smashing the Legion member back, but Lois is actually happy to see that Prime managed to bring her husband back to her, wondering how on earth he found him. Prime says that he'll explain later, wanting to first deal with the Edgelord Legion. I really like how Williamson has been using the newly heroic Superboy Prime, following on from the Jeff Johns story in Death Metal, and keeping his heroic sacrifices in that book intact, except here he's, you know, he's more cocky. He's just so cocky, but he's trying to at least be a hero and trying to do some good. Also, his fourth wall breaks could have been easily written at a Deadpool meme level, which some writers have done, like very clearly are going for that, and it never really landed for me. But Williamson writes that line where it's just enough meta stuff so it doesn't feel like it's overstaying its welcome. It's, you know, he's tapped into the fact that this guy is meant to be a fan of DC Comics and one of those kind of toxic fans. So we get stuff like he said before, like he's OP, he's a power scaler's wet dream, stuff like that makes sense for the character. Superman is punched in the face by Pharaoh Lad, so he blasts the villain with his heat vision as Lois freezes Sunboy with her freeze breath, apologizing to Clark since she lied, since while she didn't miss the powers being gone, she did miss fighting next to him. Prime makes it to the archive and works on removing the sun crystals to keep them safe before the Legion members arrive. Superman goes to see him and Lois asks what's happening with the tournament and where everyone else is, and she turns Clark to face her only to find it's not her husband at all. It's a robot. Before she can punch what she assumes is the cyborg Superman, Prime stops her, revealing that it's actually one of the many Superman robots that Clark has in his fortress, and he activated them all since they can help them get the information to the real Superman. To do that, they need to get to the Time Trapper, who at that very moment is being betrayed by Darkseid's possessed Booster Gold, who has grabbed him by the throat as intending on killing him and letting himself into the tournament. I love that Superman robots are getting a chance to be part of this event and story. It feels like we haven't had them in a proper story arc in a long while. I also really like the choice to make them each a different version of Superman, since there's a lot of iterations of the Superman robots. Sometimes they're like Kellex and they're just like literally robots. Other times they're very humanoid robots like we saw in the Superman movie. And then other times they're literally like, they look like Superman. And I like that's what they've done here, but then they've also made them each have a different version of Superman's costume. So we get the Kingdom Come one, a Superman blue one, the Black Solar Suit version, even the classic 1930s one. Gives a bit of visual variety, and who doesn't like seeing all of the different Superman suits get a mention here and there. Superman issue 32 added so much context to Lex's return to villainy and how the villains wound up in the tournament. I really like what Williamson and Scott Snyder are doing with Lex and how they are taking him on this self-righteous journey where he believes he's the only one capable of saving the world. And if my theory holds true, he's doing it to push Superman to become something that can win, and in turn Lex gets that win where technically he save the world, he just used Superman to do it. It's thoroughly interesting, and I love what they are doing with the character. Lois and Superboy Prime's part in the story is also really great too. I love the dynamic being built between them, this kind of weird sort of like mother-son sort of dynamic going on there. It's just like a really strange dynamic because these two characters have never really interacted with one another, and it's really cool seeing them sort of deal with that, and Lois having to kind of wrangle this like petulant child who's trying to do good. It just works on so many different levels. I love it so much. I'm going to give this issue a 9 out of 10.